Aaron Nola is in a very, very rough spot. All year he has been, but last night was extra rough. I don't really know any other way to sugarcoat it. So, Scott, what are the options that the Phillies have for dealing with Aaron Nola's struggles?
Hey, guys. Yeah, I mean, look, it was the worst start of his career, and his career has gone on now for 10 years. So it was not a good night for him. You ask what they can do about it, and the reality, I think, on May 15th is not a whole lot. And, you know, look, let's not lose sight of the fact that he's pitched better lately. You know, he had the Sunday night start in Chicago where he was really good. His next start after that against the Diamondbacks, he was really good. I didn't think he was terrible last Sunday night in Cleveland, or last weekend in Cleveland, whatever night that was, Friday night. So, you know, it's been better until last night. And I think, you know, with Nola, there are some realities. You know, he is, number one, pitched more innings than anyone in baseball since 2018. And so because of that, he's very familiar to a lot of the hitters that he faces. Most of them have faced him before. Number two, he doesn't throw 95, never has, 95, 96. So he's got to be pinpoint with his control. And when he's not, he tends to get hit. And I think, you know, I think that there's been a certain amount of conversation about, does he need to kind of reinvent himself a little bit? You know, does he maybe need to do some things with two strikes to put hitters away that represent a different look from what he normally does? He usually goes to his curveball in those situations. I thought when he pitched well in Chicago, when he pitched well against the Diamondbacks, he threw his cutter a lot, and he threw it well. And it was a put-away pitch for him. Maybe he's got to do more of that, right? Maybe he's got to get away from being the guy that everyone knows so well. So I think they've got to go back to the drawing board. I think they've got to figure some things out. But he's healthy, and as long as he's healthy, they'll keep running him out there every fifth day, at least for now.
Scott, one thing that's been very noticeable here in the last, I would say, about a week now, maybe even a little bit longer, is that Orion Kerkering and Romano have kind of turned things around. And I thought maybe could have been the biggest swing of the season for Kerkering yesterday, coming into that type of position and getting out of it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Ricky. I thought that was a really interesting move for a few reasons. I mean, number one, normally when Alvarado comes into an inning, he gets the opportunity to finish that inning. Look, I thought that was a situation with another game coming at night, and Rob Thompson, you know, said before the game, look, if I use a guy in game one, I'm not using him in game two. And so he was going for that game, right? Like, he could have left Alvarado in the game to face Arenado and Contreras and just sort of saved Kerkering for game two. Well, you know, the game's in hand. He said, look, I want a right-on-right matchup. Kerkering's my guy in that spot. And he brings him in, and he gets the job done. And I thought it was telling that he was confident in Kerkering in that situation. I thought it was a good sign that Kerkering came through in that situation. And you're absolutely right, because if Kerkering and Romano pitch better or pitch the way they have lately, then, you know, it's much less of a need to go out and get a right-handed reliever. I still think they're going to go find another arm at the deadline to help in that bullpen. We've talked about them being maybe a guy short, and I felt that way for a while. But boy, oh boy, if Romano and if Kerkering pitch like they've been pitching, then it's much less of a need, right? I mean, you don't have to all of a sudden give up, you know, a grade A prospect to get whoever it's going to be. You know, everyone thinks Brian Helsley, the Cardinals are playing really well, so maybe he's not available, but whoever the best available reliever is at the deadline, you don't suddenly have to go and trade Justin Crawford to go get him if those two guys are pitching a whole lot better.
Scott, speaking of the Cardinals, kind of a weird trend, but the Phillies were shut out twice in their series in St. Louis earlier in the year. The offense didn't look great until Game 3 of this series, even though they did win Game 2. Did you notice anything weird about the way Cardinals pitchers were attacking this offense in the two series so far?
No, I mean, I guess I'd have to dive more deeply into it to see if there were any patterns that emerged as far as pitch selection or location or anything like that. I mean, look, I think the Diamondbacks showed 2 years ago during the playoffs, right, that there is a way to attack the Phillies lineup. There is a way to pitch them. And we saw that a lot last season. We saw it down the stretch, right? If you throw them breaking stuff, especially out of the zone, low and away, you might get guys to chase. I don't know if that was the case there. They did score a ton of runs last night. They just gave up more. But they hit Sonny Gray around pretty well. I take your point that they got shut out a couple of times. They didn't do a ton offensively in the first game yesterday. But look, I think that by and large, their approach has been better at the plate. They've been more disciplined. They have chased less. They have shown more discipline in the strike zone. So, I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look and see if there was a real pattern that emerged over the 6 games against the Cardinals.
Yeah, that was just a weird, quirky thing that I want to check. Because it was just weird that it was the same team. But, Ricky?
I got to ask this question because they didn't get it done in spring training. Kyle Schwarber now has 15 home runs, having a great season. What do you think the chances are that the Phillies get something done maybe at the All-Star break?
I don't know. Look, right, that it takes we all know it takes 2 to tango, right? Yep. And it, typically if a guy gets this far or this close, I should say, to free agency, they typically want to test their value on the market. Now, I'll say this, if you're Kyle Schwarber and you were paying attention last winter, Pete Alonso had a heck of a time on the free agent market, right? Like he went into it thinking, I'm going to get a 9-figure deal, $100 million plus. Easy, right? I think he had the second most homers in baseball to Aaron Judge since 2019 when he came in the league. And Alonso winds up with a $54 million deal for 2 years with the Mets and an opt-out after the first, and didn't sign until right before spring training, and much more difficult time than we thought he'd have. Now, he's kind of a one-dimensional slugger, big-time slugger, right? One of the best, most feared middle-of-the-order power bats in the game. But, not a very good defensive first baseman, and the market hasn't been kind to players with that profile over the last few years. Schwarber is almost no defense, pretty much strictly a DH, and one of the most feared sluggers on the market. So if you're Schwarber and you're sitting there last offseason and you're watching Alonso go through what he went through, aren't you saying to yourself, like, boy, I wonder if this is a preview of what's in store for me? And I asked Schwarber that question in spring training, and he kind of, he did what a pro does, right? He kind of avoided the question. But he did say, look, one thing I want to do is, everybody thinks, like, with age comes decline. And I want to kind of flip that script and show that that's not necessarily got to be the case, not at age 32 at least. And, he does things every off season, whether it's, working on his approach against lefties, whether it's trying to, pull the ball less and use the field more. He kind of has things that he takes into every off season. And there's no denying that at age 32, he's a better hitter than he was at age 28 or 29 when he first got to the Phillies. It's hard to watch him now and believe that this was a guy who early in his career could not hit lefties, and because of that was questionable to be an everyday player and got cut loose by the Cubs in 2020 because he couldn't hit lefties, couldn't play every day. So he's getting better with age. And so, if I'm Kyle Schwarber, maybe I want to sit back and say, well, hey, look, let me get to the market, let me see what's out there and test my value. If I'm the Phillies, on one hand, I kind of want to lock him up. On the other hand, maybe his free agency goes the way Alonso's went, and maybe you can get him for much less than you think right now that he might go for. So I see it. I see it on both sides. The reason why you'd want to get it done, the reason why you'd want to go to the market. I just kind of think once you get into that walk year, if an extension is not done already, it usually goes to the end and plays itself out. And look, let's not forget the Phillies let JT Realmuto get to the market and wound up re-signing him. They let Aaron Nola get to the market and wound up re-signing him. So I think you could get out there, Schwarber could get out there on the market and wind up coming right back.
Well, that's what I think a lot of Phillies fans are hoping for. We'll have to keep an eye on that as the season goes on. But, Scott, we always appreciate the time very much. Thank you, and we'll be talking to you down the road.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
There he is, Scott Lauber of the Philadelphia Inquirer, and you can experience the new look of Inquirer Sports where fans can read, watch, and listen to their favorite reporters and columnists like Scott Lauber. Go to inquirer.com/sports. He joins us there on the Comcast Business Hotline. He's got a lot of great recent stuff on what the Philadelphia Phillies are doing right now.
Hey, I want to thank you guys for watching, listening in. I want you to like, subscribe, do what you have to do to kind of stay on focus with us. Also, we also have plenty of other content that goes on here on YouTube. So go to that, like that, subscribe to that. And also you can catch us on the afternoon show, 2 to 6, Monday through Friday, 97.5 The Fanatic, 97.5thefanatic.com, and NBC Sports Philadelphia.